Welcome to Fully Managed, Michael. Today's guest is Michael. He's the content director at Brandmint, where he works at the intersection of content and culture and strategy. I'm so happy to have you here. Welcome to Fully Managed.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here and chat with you about all things marketing.
I love it. So let's start with you sit at this intersection, of content, culture, strategy, like I just mentioned. So in your role today, like what are you truly shaping? What do you feel like you are shaping? Is it the message, the meaning, how the people interpret it? Like what's going on in your mind?
Sure. I think I love that you describe it as the intersection of content and culture and meaning, because I think that those are the topics that I'm very interested in. But when it comes down to like the real world and how that translates into a role, those can be very different things, right? Like culture can feel very aspirational and might be something I'm personally interested in. But when it comes down to like working with a business partner that's looking to find leads or drive sales or advertise for an apartment complex, those things are very different, right? Culture looks very different. And I think for me, what I'm trying to shape in my role is, really getting people to understand just how many stories there are out there to be told. I think if you're not familiar with marketing or are new to creating content, it can feel like you're very limited in what you're able to say. And the truth is, people, when they connect with you, people actually are willing to pay attention to so many different things. I think it's very funny that if you, okay, for example, I've got a friend who is trying to open a bakery in Rochester, New York. I wish him all the success. I love his cookies and baked goods, but he's not really doing that much content behind it. And his hang up is that he really wants to show the bakery when it's done. Like just show the final product, right? But content doesn't really work that way. What you actually find now is people are paying attention to, they're looking to make a connection with you. They want to know, like, can I trust you? Do I relate to you? And sometimes people want to use you or their brand as a stand-in for their own values. Is there a signifier here, right? But then also, like, what's the journey? So what they're actually looking for is, like, can you show me what your empty space looks like? What are you working on today? Are you just doing the flooring? You're making a decision for your logo. What decisions are you making? I think in the old concepts of marketing and what would be good content, people would just be like, here's our new logo. Isn't it cool? And now it's like, here's how I designed the logo. Here's 20 people I talked to see if my logo resonated. Here's my journey on why I love this logo and it didn't make the final cut. There are so many like untold stories that I'm trying to get my clients and other people to realize. And it is an uphill battle, I will say. And I think that Rome was not built in a day. So what I find is in my role, it's often more of being a creative battery and just showing people what's possible and getting people to engage with me a little bit before we pull out some larger wins for them.
Oh my God, that's so thoughtful. That was such a thoughtful answer. I loved it. I feel like it all comes down to connection, Like as humans, we just want to connect. We want to connect with your journey. We want to connect with your story. And that's just gonna help you connect with the brand.
Mm-hmm. Something I think is funny is there's an award here called the AMAs. I think it's the American Marketing Association, but the one based in the Rochester area, there is a category for nominations of rejected campaigns, which is by far my favorite category. And it's all these ideas that are your brainchild and you love and are so creative. And then inevitably they get denied, but you know in your core, if it saw the light, it could work. That's what I live for.
I love it. And like you come from a more structured B2B environment, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you came into a more fluid, environment. So I'm curious if there were things you had to unlearn about how content is supposed to work when you entered this new space.
Yes, for sure. Now, I do think that B2B marketing and B2C marketing gets kind of a bad rap in the sense that people think B2B marketing is a lot harder, which, in some ways it is. Targeting is a little bit different, but like they say it's a lot harder because you don't get to talk about the fun stuff or show the fun stuff. And I'm kind of like, at the end of the day, a person is looking at the content. So B2B and B2C is really just person to person? Can we find a way to make a connection, right? But yeah, I'm actually going to take a step before my B2B experience. So I don't come from a marketing background. I actually come from cultural studies. And when I joined the professional world, I was working as a teaching assistant as part of the JET program. So I lived abroad in Japan for about 2 years teaching English. And I decided to quit after watching a reality TV show where someone was like, I've gotten what I gotten out of here and I'm ready to grow. And I wanted to become a pastry chef. So I came back to the US and applied to school, got in, and then the school closed down right before I started. And
No.
yeah, it was kind of a blessing in disguise now that I think back on it. But all this to really say, like, I didn't have a marketing background or a business mindset going into the professional world. But I was very impressionable and I was very scrappy. And the first job I landed, in my second week there, they're like, you are now a professional writer, which was my only, I guess, real skill set, right? That I could put on paper. Not realizing that strategic process improvement and like brand strategy, things like that, strategic communications were also viable skills. But in that environment, it was a startup called Clutch, and you might have heard of them. They're kind of a global presence at this point, but they are a B2B ratings and reviews company that helps connect clients with vendors that are fit for purpose. So let's say I'm a bakery owner and I need an app or a website, but I don't know who to go to. And I know like the big names that are out there, but they're not going to work with a tiny bakery owner, right? So if I were to type in something like website developers in Rochester, New York, chances are you'll probably see Clutch at the top of the search page and you'll click on it and you can read a bunch of different reviews from verified clients, hopefully. And they are verified. Sometimes if we can't verify something, we'll say, we're not sure about this. We think it's real, but we're not sure. So we're going to leave it up there for now, just to know It's not verified, just so you know. And people can really treat it as a marketplace where they vet partners who are appropriate for their situation and read reviews. So in my role, I was helping edit and write content for these reviews to help people represent themselves in the best way and how they want to portray themselves. And it was like a boot camp for business writing, because when you go into B2B, you have to throw away the notion of like just stories and narratives and like how the words are, what they mean and the implication. I remember one of the first book clubs we had like business book clubs where we would learn theory about business. It was about like the rise and fall of the Ford automobile empire. And I just kept saying like, oh, well, I think it's interesting that they're portraying this as American. And what are the aspects that they keep referencing as American? And are they just using those things to reinforce this idea that it's normal to behave this way or to run a business this way? And everyone's like, what are you talking about? We're not looking at the culture of Ford. We're looking at the business structure that allows a conglomerate to scale upwards. And I'm like, okay, you got me. So I learned a lot of process and structure there. I learned to look at a problem and ask myself, is this the real problem or a symptom of something else? Is my solution a Band-Aid or is it attacking the core cause? Who are the stakeholders involved? Because something that I'm solving in a silo might have larger unintended effects. And so it was really scrappy, but very process oriented. And I had a very rigid mindset of like what content could be, which was like, let's stay professional. Our guidelines were always about being professional and courteous, not very raw, oftentimes very polished. And when I transitioned from Clutch, which is this larger B2B setting, but still a startup, I would still say startup mentality, into a boutique agency. So currently I'm at Brandmint, which is a content first advertising agency based in Rochester, New York. We have some offices in Ithaca, and then also a presence in Richmond, Virginia. But the culture is very different. And I'm no longer working with a bunch of really ambitious people who are entering the business world or drawing on like years of experience to run a national level campaign or content or something like that. I was now working with people who were working at the local level. And what I realized was that these tactics that I was relying on, my business savvy and my knack for process, if I just relied on those skills and I came in and I was like, boom, hey, I know what's wrong with your business. It's 1, 2, and 3. Here's a step breaking down your current state assessment. I need these numbers from you, and this is what I need to do. This is what you need to do to make it better. I got no engagement. No one liked that. No one liked me. I took it very personally. And I realized that in the clients that I was working with and the types of businesses that I was working with are really more community oriented in Western Central Upstate New York. And I needed to unlearn this abrasive sort of go get them attitude and really hone my active listening skills a little bit more. I also needed to find ways to take the positives and the resiliency that I built in a B2B setting and translate it into a more scrappy boutique agency setting, which is very fast paced. It's very, there's like, I don't even know how to describe it. There's always something new going on. Your day is never the same, right? And yeah, I needed a way to. I needed to be more flexible with my thinking. I think that in a B2B setting, I was very much like, I need to have all the information to make a decision. And I don't know if you watch Survivor or not. It's a reality TV show here. But it's just a reality TV show here. But there's a contestant on it in one of the recent seasons. Her name is Say. And she said something like, if you trust your gut with incomplete information, you're in a trap or something like that. It's like a really easy way to trick yourself. And I really do believe that to my core. But when you work in an agency setting that it's really fast paced, you need to be able, like a good leader needs to be able to make a decision and make an educated guess based on incomplete information. Because if you're waiting for all the right things to fall into place, chances are you're already far behind. So I need to be more agile. And that's really what I had to unlearn, like my strictness on process and my need to kind of have everything controlled in a certain way and then kind of be more go with the flow and let's act fast. Let's see what we can do and then learn and adapt as we go.
That's so interesting. And I'm so captivated by all these paths, different paths you've walked, from starting in cultural studies. Like, that's so interesting. And then your time in Japan, teaching English. And then you wanted to culinary studies. And then your time at Clutch and how you have integrated different parts of those paths into who you are today. Like, I find that so fascinating and how much you've clearly grown,
Thank you.
In this path. That's so cool.
That's very kind of you to say. Thank you.
And like in our past conversation, you mentioned, when we first met about how strategies fail when people don't adopt them. So how much of good content strategy is really about understanding people versus understanding platforms?
That is a great question. And honestly, I don't even know if I have a solid answer. I feel that my answer might change day to day. It's the same feeling as when someone says like, hey, do you want the receipt after you check out for your coffee? And then sometimes you say yes and sometimes you say no. It just depends on the day. But currently how I feel is I would say you should stop stressing about the platform and focus more on the people side, because the content itself often depends on understanding people, whether it's twofold, right? One part is what you're trying to say and what's important to you. And the other part, which I think is more important, is understanding your target audience and what they care about. So you want to stay true to yourself, but you also want to have something that speaks to them. It answers, it solves a problem that they have or is something that they can relate to. Having that connection is really what drives that engagement with your brand and keeps you in good standing, right? Where platform comes into play is more about the targeting capabilities and the format of your core content. So, at at Brandmint, something I've been pushing, this is not a new idea. This has been around for like 10 years at least. But it's something called a content ecosystem, right? Which is, I'm assuming your listeners know, but if they don't know, a content ecosystem is a way to visualize all the different parts of content in various channels for your strategy. And the idea is not only to visualize it, but to understand that the different pieces of content have different purposes and can attract people in different ways. So, for example, a blog article, which is a long form piece of content, might help people understand information at a high level, whereas something like a targeted ad, which can draw from that information, is more about like making a sale or a lead. So you go from high level to something more bottom of funnel, right? Social media is often used for brand awareness, depending on your product and what you're trying to do. Social media is more for brand awareness and can take elements of each in order to make it feel more engaging. And the idea is to take a concept that is more informational and then make it relatable to the average person. So I push for a content ecosystem because it really highlights that different channels and different platforms want different things, and their algorithms promote different things to different people depending on how they perform. But at the end of the day, that doesn't necessarily change what I want to say or what I'm trying to connect with for people. It just changes the form. It changes the format. So if I had to pick one to focus on, I would say focus on your content and how it relates to people. Be really solid in what you're trying to say and why it should matter to people. And literally talk to people, talk to your current clients, talk to peers in your industry to build these connections, because find ways to translate them into a digital world before you even start thinking about platform. Because once you get into platform, things get a lot more complicated. And if you start with platform, you're actually going to find that you'll get paralysis and not create any content at all.
Yeah, I can imagine. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. And you also spoke about narrative-driven content in a world where everyone can publish. So how do you define what makes a story worth listening to when visibility is no longer a barrier?
That is a great question. And I think it really depends on to whom. Like, who is that? Who is determining whether your content is a story is worth telling or not? Is it you or is it your audience? And I think for me, I think there are so many stories that are worth telling, and it all boils down to your target audience and then something that you want to say. And what I find is when I'm working with clients who are trying to determine if a story is worth telling or not, they're often working with like a very limited range of what they think is worth telling. And they're actually more concerned about how they're being perceived as opposed to being confident in the message that they want to say and who they're trying to reach. I think a story worth telling is something that feels important to you or important to your target audience.
Oh my God, that's I love that. That's a really interesting way to reshape it. And I also remember you saying that you grew up alongside the rise of social media, but not fully inside of it, like Gen Z. So how has that in-between perspective shaped the way you question what feels real, popular, or even like culturally relevant?
Yeah, I think that as a younger millennial, as a millennial, I'm 33. So
You're barely a millennial.
Yeah. As a millennial, I think that social media and media in general has really shaped the way I view the world, because, when we had just traditional media, and by traditional, I mean like broadcast and radio, advertisements like that, I would look at those things and I would have those be my expectations. So I would look at like a family on a sitcom and be like, well, why isn't my family like that? Why doesn't, that sibling relationship seems so nice? Why does my brother bully me when, like, in reality, I'm probably bullying my brother? I'm just not self-aware. And then social media, the rise of social media kind of changed the game, right? Because by democratizing the space, it allowed so many more people to talk about what's going on with them and show real perspectives. And that was explosive for better or for worse, right? Because now you were able to find the people who felt ostracized or didn't feel that they were represented in mainstream media found avenues and channels to connect with people that were similar to them or had similar values. So social media became like a haven for subcultures and counterculture. We talk about Tumblr blog, Tumblr girl aesthetic is coming back in, but like Tumblr was really big for a lot of people to kind of discover like girlhood. I think is like a big topic there, along with like fan fiction and like the ability to fangirl. Like there are whole academic essays about like the culture of fangirling, and the how it's gendered and what it means to participate in that. And I think it's so beautiful because that would not have been a quote unquote appropriate topic in traditional media, right? And now, it's social media is kind of taking a life of its own because social media, at the end of the day, it's a platform, and if platforms are run by platforms themselves do not create content. They are an avenue for users to create content on its behalf. So platforms, the main goal of a platform is to increase engagement and view times in order eventually to sell ads of some sort, to monetize in some way, right? And they also need to have trust so that people stay attached to them or to stay engaged with the platform. And because of that, I think when you when you put yourselves in the shoes of a developer for a platform, you start to think about like, well, what do my metrics look like? How do I create an algorithm that gets people essentially addicted to my platform? And you'll find that algorithms are really good at creating echo chambers. They glom onto one thing that you like and then just keep showing you that one thing over and over and over again. And I know that there are like truly exceptional social media managers, like truly exceptional ones, will have 8 different phones or something, and each phone is calibrated to a specific viewpoint that's very different. And I've seen them, and I'm like, oh my God, all of your algorithm feeds are so different. I've never seen half of this stuff before. And so the concept, because of these echo chambers that algorithms create, the concept of what is truly popular is so different. It's like not really there anymore. Before with broadcasting, there's sort of like a baseline cultural landscape that everyone is tuned into to some point or another. Even if you didn't like something or didn't want to engage with it, you still knew about it. Like I've never seen all of the Star Wars movies. I think I've seen 1 or 2, and I started in the wrong spot. I like started at like 8 when I probably should have started at the original trilogy. But even if I haven't engaged with it, I still know about it enough because it's in the cultural sphere, right? Mm-hmm. And with social media, now there's sort of like everything's kind of like a deep cut. Everything's a niche, everything's an aesthetic, and they've been sort of bubbled away that it's really hard to understand what's popular and what's in pop culture anymore. Because these algorithms are feeding you specific narratives or specific viewpoints. I think that because I have this perspective of it, or, this sort of, because I lived in a world where social media wasn't a thing and then became a thing, there is sort of a nostalgia for the authentic moments that didn't happen online. I don't think everything has to be online. And I think that there is kind of a hunger for that, because again, with the rise of social media and the way platforms behave, it also encourages people to create content in a specific way to be seen and to gain influence, right? And you'll notice that there's like a rejection of influencers, but there is a praise for people who feel authentic. One example is Courtney Cook. I don't know if you've seen any of her videos, but you heard it here first. I love her. I think she's so cool, and she's such an interesting case study in like, people versus platform. What do you focus on? And then also just like, what are people craving? Because she blew up out of nowhere. Her rise was like a meteor. It was crazy. And it was because she was willing to be very authentic to herself. All she did was film in the OG days. She would film herself eating in her classroom her lunch, and then she would just talk about her lunch and how much she liked it. And the category that she would fall in under social media would be like a mukbang, which is just eating in front of a camera, right? But we've seen that category before. We've seen so many players in the space, but hers felt different because she was willing to be unpolished, and that's what attracted people towards her. She was endlessly positive. She's a teacher. She wants to protect her students, and she wants to promote healthy eating habits and just share what she's eating, and to share that education isn't a scary thing, right? And she's like rising rapidly because of that. And then because she had so many people tuning into her to look at her creations, I know some people will be like, oh, she's quirky and people are watching her because they don't like what she's eating, like the combinations. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure there's a part of that in there, but people are watching her because she's not afraid to like something that's not popular, right? She's okay with being uncool because she's not trying to be cool. She's just trying to be herself. And social media allows you to be yourself and get paid for it. And then now we're entering this new era of Courtney Cook where she is kind of, it feels like maybe it's just the algorithm for me, but it kind of feels like she's starting to become everywhere because brands are paying attention to the influence that she has over people. She had people selling out of cheese and sweet potatoes because of her cravings. And I'm almost worried that because she's everywhere, people are going to get sick of her because the algorithm's like boom, 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 boom. But I think it speaks back to this idea of like a hunger and an appetite for authenticity and something that feels really real. And I'm going to say two more things before I pass it back to you because I realize I've been monologuing. The first one is...
No, I love it.
There's a movie called 13 Going on 30 with Jennifer Gardner, I think.
Yeah.
Where she wakes up as a 30-year-old and she's like this cold marketing exec. Like that was like the myth back then, right? Like these marketing execs are so cold and calculated. And she was just like, I hate all of these campaigns that we're doing. What if we do something that feels really authentic? Hello. Which is like, people don't want to look at these random strangers on your fashion magazine. They want to look up to the heroes that they had when they were kids, which are like, like when you're a kid and you see your sister going out and you're like, I want to be that person because she looks so cool. Or your brother just like won the big game and you're like, I'm going to start football so that I can like join, like there's a locality to it. There's a way to take what's happening at this really intimate level and scale it up or show how vulnerable you could be and have that be a way for people to connect with you, not to sell something, but to share a part of you. I think the thing I love about social media and content in general is like, if you are truly authentic to yourself, you are taking something and you're saying like, I believe that this is beautiful and this is something that moves me or makes me cry or something I really believe in. And you give it to someone and then they turn it over in their hands as you're describing it, and then they give it back to you. And hopefully they're kind to you, which is something like Jenny Slate had like described before. And that's really what I feel is successful in authentic social media content. So that's the first thing. I think there's something like authenticity is always going to be some part of the quote unquote formula for success. The other thing I want to mention is I think that nowadays social media is trying to get people to kind of become influencers. And I am worried that with the rise of generative AI usage, all we're going to get is content slop, which is devoid of authenticity. And, you think that you're immune to it, but you're really not, right? And I hate the idea of someone using AI to write a script and then they read the script and then you kind of realize you didn't write the script. You didn't do the research for this, not because you didn't find it interesting. You probably chose this niche because you felt like it was well performing and you just wanted to get views, right? You didn't take the time to write the script or do the research because you didn't want to grapple with trying to understand, what am I trying to say? What do I find interesting about this? Does this even matter to me? And then with the written script, you're just reading it. So then you essentially are becoming a human puppet for AI generated content. And I'm not here. I'm being realistic. I'm not here to tell you that marketers shouldn't use AI content, or like AI content is worse than human made content. Like, I have my feelings about it, but it's kind of irrelevant in this industry. This is what we're paying attention to right now, and this is what people are using. But I would just encourage people to be mindful of, like, what does intentional AI usage look like? And if you are not creating content intentionally, what are you even doing? Like, you aren't going to build trust that way, whether it's as a brand or as a personal influencer.
Oh my God, there is so much in the answer you just gave me. And I feel like there's so much honesty to that. And I'm fascinated by the way, the lens in which you see everything like this in social media and in general, because I feel like it can have such a negative connotation in a lot of ways, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like it's just a really toxic place full of hate and it can be, you know, but I love how you see it with this place of genuine connection, you know, and you being yourself and inspiring other people to be themselves or to change their ways of thinking into more positive ones. Like social media has given me so much, you know, like I was just reflecting in your answer, and it truly has been a really positive place. Like it can be definitely a really negative place, but I feel like it all depends in what you interact with, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
what you choose to focus on. Because oh my God, it has. I have learned so much valuable things, and it truly has transformed me or helped, has been a key in helping me transform me into the woman I am today. And I feel like social media and the sort of accounts or you know I choose to interact with, it has given me so much. So I love that you see it that way, because you know I am Gen Z, and I just grew up with this connotation that social media can be such a dark and negative place and dangerous, and it can be, yeah, but it's, I feel like we have the power to choose, you know, what the algorithm feeds us.
I'd love to ask you a question. I work with Gen Z people, coworkers too, and it's always fascinating how they feel about social media. But what's your relationship with social media, and how you talked about some positives? Can you share something that has improved your life because of social media?
Oh my God, I am an astrology girl to my core. You know, I have learned so much from the astrology community. Like it keeps me updated on the transits that are going on. The, you know, like an eclipse is going on right now. You may feel super tired or
Mm-hmm.
super emotionally charged, and it's like yes. And then I go and do my own research, you know. But that has been like the spiritual community has. Oof, there's this woman who just absolutely changed my life called Ale Bernal. She does these things called like sacred codes, and they're like codes you say, like numbers that hold an energetic frequency that help like
Mm.
unblock certain like unconscious patterns that you have, that has just like absolutely transformed my existence. Like, and it wouldn't have happened without social media, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Like I, she has created this community in a matter of months, like 4 months, and she just spreads so much light and wisdom and love. And you know, that's the kind of place I want to be in. That's the kind of community I want to be related to. That's, you know, the kind of things that I want my algorithm to feed me all the time. She's just so genuine and authentic, and you can just feel that she really is trying to build a community to help everyone, you know, become their best selves and heal and just live their best lives. And that is just the best, like truly. And even like a couple of years ago when I started getting into all things astrology, it helped me so much to find good books to read, good blogs. It has been a really powerful tool to that has added a lot of value to my life. But also in that way, you know, I still like I wake up and the first thing I do is just scroll through
I
something that
know.
I don't like that. I was like, every time I wake up, it's like, no, I don't want to be this person. That the first thing I do is just consume and enter the doom scroll. I hate that. I really hate that, and it's something that I'm actively trying to work on. But that, and just like, I'm sort of addicted. So it's sort of, it has added so much to my life, but in the same way, I'm like always just mindlessly scrolling, and that's not something that I'm proud of, to be honest.
I feel the same way. Actually, it's funny. Some people on my team have like time limits on their social media. So like
Sure.
after they hit like 10 minutes, it shuts down and they have to type in a code in order to get 10 more minutes. But it's funny because I think that a conversation that's starting to rise up, and I'm really happy that more people are talking about it, is like how addictive social media can be. I love the positives that it can bring, but I want to be very careful and realistic about like how it can shape someone's mind as they're growing up. There are countries that have banned social media for youth under 16. I think maybe someone fact check me, but I think New Zealand did that. And there are potential talks of doing it in the U.S. too for certain areas. And I think social media, a lot of platforms are designed to be addictive. Like I remember I was talking to someone on a different podcast, actually, on Clutch's podcast, where they had talked about how Netflix or Hulu, I don't remember which CEO, but someone was asking like, hey, the Netflix CEO, who's your biggest competitor? Is it Disney Plus? Is it Hulu? Is it Peacock?
It's TikTok.
They actually said it's sleep.
Sleep.
Mm-hmm. Like the act of going to bed, because they want people like watching all the time. And this was like years ago. This was like truly years ago. So it's probably, I don't know if it's the same person anymore, but when I thought about it that way, it's like, platforms, their main currency with people is attention. They want you to be on their apps, which is why it's addictive. And they try to discourage you from like going to a different app or like clicking off platform. And I was watching a TikTok, and I'm so sorry, I don't remember her name and I don't remember the author's name, but they were talking about a book they read where the essential argument was that your life is, at the end of the day, your life is everything you had paid attention to and remember. Because that's what you're able to kind of recount and share with people. And essentially it's attention, right? So if you think of it that way, and you think about how social media is designed to be attention grabbing, and you think about how much time you spend on it, you start to realize that sometimes social media can feel life or death because you're paying with attention, which is a facet of time and a facet of your life. If you're making the connection that attention is your life, right? And so there are times when I feel like I can't look at another screen. I gotta unplug. I gotta like be with the real people. And it makes me really like scared to be on social media, to feel vulnerable in a world that can be a little unkind to you. But then I remember that if I put out positive intention and I interact positively with people, like, you're going to get what you put out there. I've actually started noticing that like my comments have gone from like edgy teenager to sort of like supportive mom. And I can easily see like my nephew being like, oh, what a loser. And I'm like, okay, but like, does it hurt to give a compliment? Does it hurt to be like, hey, I hope you're having a nice day, I love your outfit or whatever? Like, who cares? That person probably feels better afterwards. And it's changed my algorithm. My algorithm is a lot different from like my partner's, which is like all like, I don't know, haunted houses. And yeah, so that's just something I think about.
Oh my God. I was thinking about what you said about this Netflix CEO and just how the biggest competitor, is the sleep. And I thought about how the attention spans have just gone on a terrible decline.
Yeah.
And how, I don't know if you've heard of this small show called Game of Thrones.
Yes, I have.
Well, as you know, the episodes were so long, and House of the Dragon, it continued to being an hour-long episodes. But now they released the Night of the Seven Kingdoms, which is also part of that world, and the episodes are 20 minutes long because they know that people have terrible attention spans, and it's not going to have the same success as Game of Thrones did because times have changed. Like, you could get away with having a 1 hour 75 minute episode back then, but right now let's like forget about it. I thought that was so crazy, the impact it had, and it's such a monumental series. Like, I remember the first time they told me, like, it's just 20 minutes. Like, what? 20 minutes? Like, a Game of Thrones world being 20 minutes? I thought that was insane. But that leads me to my next and final question. Like, you are constantly surrounded by content, trends, opinions, like we are. And I'm curious, has there ever been a moment where you caught yourself believing something just because you saw it everywhere?
Yeah. I think anyone who says no to that is lying to themselves and they don't know how any of this works. I just think that there's it also happens with like the academic world too, but people have to be, the standards are often higher in academia. So like you need to be really careful with your research and your sources. But social media, like if you see an idea enough times, even if you don't fully believe it, you're more susceptible to it, right? Like the idea is out there. And the other thing is, like, even if you don't believe it, you also have to consider, I don't believe it, but someone else probably does. So now, even if I don't believe it, I have to work around it some way to reach the right people or to make the right narrative. And it's so, interesting to me because, like, let's like go back to algorithms, right? Like, think about how SEO works with Google, any search engine, but Google being the top one, or like how LLMs and other AI agents AI assistants are helping people make decisions for things. How does a machine know what is a reputable source versus not a reputable source? I mean, there are indicators, right? That literally it's programmed in, but when you start to break it down, you start to kind of see the gaps in it of like, can it tell the difference between an opinion versus a fact? Can it tell the difference between sarcasm versus not sarcastic? Is it using prevalence and how many times something is mentioned to lend credit to the idea, which I do think it probably does. And that is why we have so much bot activity in social media and websites and blogs. There's so many things that are influencing us just through prevalence. And that is why I think if you're trying to change an idea, you're often going to see, I mean, this is conspiracy theory stuff, but like you're often going to see people like relying on bots and PR to change narratives and general personal opinion. So yes, I have definitely probably agreed with something without checking the sources because I've seen it so many times on social media.
Oh my God, it's crazy. And absolutely, like, me too. Oh my God. This just gives me so much to think about, this conversation. Michael, oh my God, I feel like we definitely need a part two. Like, there was so much more that I could cover. We definitely need a part two of this episode. Like, this was such a great conversation. Like, I really love the lens through which you see things. I feel so much intention behind everything you do, and it really comes through. So thank you so much for taking the time to share your beautiful mind with us today. I'm so happy I got to have you here.
Thank you for having me. It was a blast. And yeah, anything I can do to help, just let me know.
You've been listening to Fully Managed, brought to you by Penji. Check out the show notes to learn more about today's guest. And to learn more about Penji, the human-first creative subscription service, head over to penji.co. And by the way, if you're still listening, it would mean the absolute world to us if you were to share this podcast with a friend and, of course, subscribe.